The killings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman are crimes that remain unsolved. The opinions expressed in this series represent just some of the many conceivable scenarios regarding how those crimes may have occurred. We encourage viewers to reach their own conclusions. Tonight, the most notorious murder case of the 20th century.
I love you very much, and I'll see you soon.
You may think you know the story.
We find the defendant not guilty of the crime of murder.
But you don't.
Do I believe that O.J. Simpson committed the murder? No.
I believe there was a cover-up to conceal the truth.
A new investigation.
There could have been two people. That makes more sense.
Blood, and more blood. He did it with malice.
They didn't cross a lot of their T's or dot their I's because they knew who the suspect was.
New evidence.
Oh my God. This is the weapon that killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman.
We have to vet the entire alibi.
We have 2 sets of bloody shoe prints. And even if you took the position of one of them's O.J. Simpson, where the hell is the other one?
New theories.
He said, I couldn't have done this alone. Have you ever been treated for mental illness?
No. There's no way he's telling the truth. He's manipulating the situation to give us a false impression of who he is.
This is the year of the night for me. This is a very troubled person.
This man's got some problems.
Let's go. Hit it. It's 17 minutes. Go.
Remember one thing, there's no statute of limitation when it comes to the truth.
Monday, June 13, 1994. Day breaks in the affluent neighborhood of Brentwood, California. The residents of this quiet Los Angeles community are unaware of the vicious crimes committed the night before.
I got a double homicide that I want to let you know about. It's going to be press that's going to be crawling on us like ants when they find out what's going on.
Can you give me the name?
Well, you're not going to let this...
No, I'm an investigator.
Okay, I'm going to have to trust you on this. It's O.J. Simpson's ex-wife.
Oh, boy.
Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were found murdered outside Nicole's Brentwood condo, setting off a chain of events that would captivate the world.
If people who live in this neighborhood were left wondering why this happened, so were the police. Motive will be the big question for them to answer. As for O.J. Simpson, all they would tell us is that he was out of town when it happened, that he had been contacted, and that he was on his way back to Los Angeles.
Just a few days later, the LAPD had their primary suspect for the murders, Nicole's ex-husband, Orenthal James Simpson. After being asked to surrender, O.J. Simpson led the LAPD on a slow-speed chase that gripped the nation.
You're gonna hurt everybody. No, don't. Hey, listen. Think about everybody else, all right?
I could do it on a freeway. I could do it in a field. I want to do it at a grave. I want to do it in my house.
You're not gonna do anything. Please, toss the gun. Just toss it. Come on, man.
That evening, O.J. Simpson was arrested for the murders. What followed was the so-called trial of the century.
It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
After 135 days of trial, the jurors needed only 3 hours to reach a verdict.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
While O.J. celebrated, others thought he had gotten away with murder. and the families of the victims have never experienced a sense of closure. But if O.J. Simpson is in fact innocent, who is responsible for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman? Private investigator William Dear has made it his life's work to discover the truth and find out what really happened on the evening of June 12, 1994.
I've been in this business over 50 years. It's a long time as a private investigator.
Dear has spent the past 2 decades looking into the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. With potential new evidence, he believes that O.J. Simpson is innocent and that he knows who the murderer is. Dear has recruited 2 investigators to independently examine his theory. 13-year veteran Rhode Island Police Sergeant Derek Levasseur is known for his street smarts and specializes in undercover work, with extensive training in criminal interviews and interrogations. Chris Mahondy is a forensic psychologist with more than a dozen years' experience at the LAPD. He has contributed to hundreds of homicide investigations, including being a part of the LAPD negotiation team during O.J.'s infamous Bronco chase.
I'm looking for justice, and I think by having these 2 men look at what I've been able to uncover, we'll get that justice, because the whole goal in this thing is seeking the truth and the closure to the murders of Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman.
Derek, Chris Mahondy. Nice to finally meet you in person.
Likewise.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Sorry I'm a couple minutes late.
So tell me about yourself.
Yeah, I got the call about this. It's the O.J. case. If I have an opportunity to be part of it, I want in. So, yeah, I booked on the next flight. I'm out here. How about yourself?
What Bill told me that piqued my interest is he has a theory of some sort that is 180 degrees out from what everybody thinks about what actually happened.
I mean, from what I know, O.J. did it. What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, I had no reason to doubt it, and I have my reasons for strongly believing.
If this guy thinks he has the truth, then I want to hear it.
He might not. It might be someplace in the middle.
But if it leads to something that could be life-changing for some other people, you know, I'm in.
I'm not sure what it is that his theory leads to.
Right.
But I'm intrigued.
Born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1959, Nicole Brown moved to California when she was just a toddler. As she grew into a beautiful young woman, she drew attention wherever she went, and at 18, the high school homecoming queen found a job at an exclusive Beverly Hills nightclub. While waitressing there, Nicole met NFL superstar O.J. Simpson. Although he was 12 years older and still married to his first wife, he fell for Nicole, and within months, they were living together. 8 years later, in 1985, the couple married. O.J. and Nicole wasted no time in starting a family.
I don't believe that I had this baby. I didn't really, but I did.
Nicole also became a stepmother to Jason and Arnell, O.J.'s children from his first marriage. Despite such domestic bliss, Nicole and O.J.'s marriage was far from a fairy tale. Not only was O.J. a known philanderer, he was also abusive.
Is Daddy cheating?
Daddy shouldn't have never done what he did.
After 7 rocky years of marriage, the couple divorced in 1992, but the abuse continued. Before they begin their inquiry, the investigators have decided to meet with the families of the victims and pay their respects. Tanya Brown, one of Nicole's younger sisters, has agreed to meet with Derek and share her memories of the tragedy, the trial, and her beloved big sister.
First and foremost, Nicole was a mother first, not a victim.
Yeah.
So, what was her relationship like with her kids?
Nicole was always, there. And any reason for her to bring in her family and her friends and her children's friends just made her so happy. You know, his family, my family, the kids, Arnell and Jason, she brought so much love to making sure everybody was happy. And she made everything so special. And she never waited for a special moment to do that.
Let's talk about the actual incident. It happens. How do you find out about it?
Well, it was Monday morning, 6:30, when I was awakened by horrible screams. It's like every single horror movie you've ever seen in your entire life all culminated into one person. And that was Denise just screaming. And I was like, what's going on? And I'm like, what's the matter? And she says, Coco's dead. And that's what the kids nicknamed her. And I was like, no. I go, you guys just saw her last night. And I went to my mom and dad's bathroom. And there was my dad with his head on his forehand, and he's just punching the sink counter. And I go, Daddy, is it true? And he goes, yes. I just remember looking at the television with a white sheet covering my sister, and my mom's holding my hand, and I'm holding hers, and she says, that's my kid.
I can't even imagine what that's like.
The first time I learned about her abuse is when we were in court. So I had, like, no idea.
So you're sitting here.
I'm just sitting here going, oh, my goodness. And that's the only recorded voice I have of my sister is fear.
911 emergency.
Can you get someone over here now? He's back. Please.
Okay, what does he look like?
He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just send somebody over here?
Okay, what is he doing there?
He just drove up.
Wait a minute, what kind of car is he in?
He's in a white Bronco. But first of all, he broke the back door down to get in.
Okay, wait a minute, what's your name?
Nicole Simpson.
Okay, just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line.
Just stay on the line, okay?
Obviously, she was an amazing woman, and it's unfortunate that she was taken from us.
Yeah.
And I can promise you I'm going to do whatever I can to find out anything that we don't already know.
Born on July 2nd, 1968, Ronald Lyle Goldman was the oldest son of his father Fred and mother Sharon. Ron and his sister Kim shared a bond that seemed unbreakable.
My brother and I were like two peas in a pod. We were like the best of friends. We knew that no matter what, we would always have each other all the time. And my brother was like my protector.
In the eyes of the nation, Ron was a tragic victim caught in the middle of a violent argument between Nicole Brown Simpson and her assailant. To learn more about who Ron Goldman was and how his family was affected by his brutal murder, Chris wants to talk to Ron's father, Fred Goldman.
This journey has been shattering from the beginning, in a sense, through today, because your life changes 100%.
What would you like me to know about your son and your experiences?
For most of the early part of the trial, Ron was known as the other victim, or Nicole's friend. He had an identity, not just as the secondary person.
Right.
You know, the only mention of the victims in the courtroom visually were crime scene photos. There was no picture of Nicole, there was no picture of Ron. They were evidence to be looked at and then pushed aside. My son was a loving, caring young man from the day he was born through the extent of his life. He helped people on a regular basis. Certainly his sister was one of those. He always stood up for his sister. They were the best of friends, not just brother and sister. They were the best of friends.
It sounds like he was an incredible human being.
That he was.
What did you make of the verdict?
I thought it was outrageous, sad, disgusting.
Last June 13th, 94, was the worst nightmare of my life. This is the second. I will forever be proud of my son and my family. Thank you.
It's about life and the taking of it that's important. And that should never be ignored, ever.
Having connected with the families of the victims, investigators Derek Levasseur and Chris Mahonde are now ready to meet with Bill Deere and listen to the details of his theory about who really committed these infamous murders.
I remember when the murders of Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman occurred. At the beginning, I was convinced that O.J. Simpson was guilty. When I looked at all the facts, they didn't line up. It didn't make sense to me. I know who the murderer is, and I can prove it. To me, the most important thing is to let you know where I stand and what I have. I'm convinced O.J. never committed this murder, but it was O.J.'s son, Jason Lamar Simpson. He had the opportunity, the means, and the motive to have killed Nicole Simpson and Ronald Lyle Goldman.
That's a lot. It's overwhelming in a lot of respects.
For most people, their only memory of Jason Simpson is after the verdicts, when he read his father's post-trial statement.
A statement from my father. I'm relieved that this part of the incredible nightmare that occurred on June 12, 1994 is over. I will pursue, as my primary goal in life, the killer or killers who slaughtered Nicole and Mr. Goldman. They are out there somewhere. Whatever it takes to identify them and bring them in, I'll provide somehow. My father will have more to say at a later time.
If I spent the last 23 years of my time and my money seeking justice, and I'm wrong, I'll apologize to Jason on camera. I'll apologize in person. Do I believe I'm wrong? No. But if you all prove to me that I am wrong, I'll live with that. But you're going to have to prove it. He was 24 years old at the time, 5'11", 235, and one of the most important things was that he was on probation for assaulting his previous employer at the time of the murders. And yet they never made one attempt to interview him. They never once looked at Jason.
For the LAPD not to have interviewed Jason, he must have had a solid alibi.
Well, let me show you his supposed alibi. It's his time card. He was the acting chef that night at this restaurant. And according to the time card, he checked in at 2:30 and out at 10:30. But what do you find strange about it?
It's handwritten.
Did we already confirm that nobody else had handwritten their time in that night? Really?
That time card machine was working on the night of the murders of June 12th. And I can verify it.
We'll have to look into that, and also who signed off on it.
Absolutely.
Jason Simpson had rented a storage facility. He had failed to make the last two payments. And because he failed to make the last two payments, I was able to obtain all the items that he put into public storage. Jason took a box, just one box, and placed it in the center. It was like his whole life was in that box. Inside were his personalized diaries. And when you look at it, it reminds me of a young man who's in terrible turmoil. I'm just going to quote a couple of things from it. It's the year of the knife for me. I do not want to play Jekyll and Hyde any longer. That's got to speak to the issue of what happened on the night of June 12th. I think as you go along, you're going to find an entirely different picture of Jason Lamar Simpson. Not only was he dark, disturbed, but he had a complex problem with his dad. I want to share some other things. Take a look at this picture. This is a picture of Jason Simpson wearing a knit cap that looks exactly like the knit cap found at the crime scene.
Lying next to the bloody glove outside Nicole's Brentwood condo was a knit cap. Inside the cap, crime scene investigators discovered traces of hair consistent with a black male. But this hair could not be linked directly to O.J. Simpson. The LAPD never examined whether this knit cap belonged to another assailant. Could it have belonged to Jason Simpson?
What's really important is the fact that we have two sets of bloody shoe prints, both coming and going. And even if you took the position of one of them is O.J. Simpson, who the hell is the other one?
During the trial, the prosecution claimed there was only one set of shoe prints coming and going from the scene of the crime, O.J.'s Bruno Magli shoes. But the defense claimed that there were actually two sets of shoe prints. If in fact there was another set, it would suggest two assailants were involved.
I want you to notice that this is a photograph taken at the crime scene showing Nicole's watch. Notice the watch was broken and stopped at 9:59 p.m. And this is totally contrary to all the things that was used in the prosecution as far as the timeline of the murders.
During the trial, the prosecution claimed that the murders occurred at 10:15 p.m. But this crime scene photo that has never been released until now shows Nicole's watch reading 9:59. If Bill Deere is correct, and her watch had stopped at 9:59 p.m., it would contradict the prosecution's timeline and open the door to alternative theories.
They rushed to judgment, and they pointed at O.J. Simpson and left Jason by himself.
I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. I'm sure you've already heard it before. This is an elaborate story. There's a lot of people out there that aren't going to believe it. How do we address it?
With facts.
And if the facts don't line up, we're going to call it as we see it. And if we think this is bunk, we're going to say bunk.
If I'm correct, Jason called O.J. after the murders. O.J. went there to the crime scene, and once he went to the crime scene, he became part of the crime. He was just as guilty as Jason Simpson. Now, do I believe that O.J. Simpson committed the murder? No. Do I believe that Jason Lamar Simpson did? Yes. Do I believe he may be protecting his son? Yes.
When Bill first said that he felt the killer of Nicole and Ron was Jason, I was actually genuinely surprised with the theory. But I'm going to approach everything objectively so I can find out the truth.
Now, finally, and most shocking of all, I found this knife in Jason Simpson's box inside that public storage facility. I believe this is the weapon that killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman. It belonged to Jason Lamar Simpson.
When Bill said he had the murder weapon and I saw the knife, I'm like, wow. The fact that that was in that storage locker that Bill uncovered was amazing to me.
I want you to pull it out and look at it at this point. When we measured it, it fit perfectly with what the medical examiner had told us of the laceration sustained by Nicole. Now you notice the one thing that I haven't done in the period of time of having this knife, I never allowed anybody to open the stitching because I felt possibly there may be some blood inside.
Although Jason Simpson has never commented on these allegations, this potentially overlooked evidence could vastly alter what the public knows about the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Did the knit cap found at the crime scene belong to Jason Simpson? Is the knife found in Jason Simpson's abandoned storage locker the murder weapon? Was there in fact two sets of shoe prints coming and going from the crime scene? And if there was another suspect that committed these violent crimes, was it Jason Simpson?
I want the truth, and I think that's what the general public wants. They want the truth for a change, and I think we're in a position to give it to them.
Clearly there's some unanswered questions both the victims and the families deserve to have answered, and that's what Chris and I are here to do. We're here to look at it with a fresh set of eyes, weed through all the bull, and figure out what we have. I was ready to go right that second and start working on it.
The killings of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman are crimes that remain unsolved. The opinions expressed in this series represent just some of the many conceivable scenarios regarding how those crimes may have occurred. Jason Simpson has never been questioned or charged in relation to these crimes, and he has not made any public statements about any allegations regarding his involvement. We encourage viewers to reach their own conclusions. Police Sergeant Derek Levasseur and forensic psychologist Chris Mahandi have begun their investigation of the O.J. Simpson murder case. They're starting their journey at the scene of the crime, Nicole Brown Simpson's Brentwood condo.
Okay, so Derek, this next street is Dorothy. I want you to make a left here, and it's going to be an immediate right into the alley. It's going to come up here. This building, yeah, this building right here. Yeah.
So he would have parked right here, walked through that gate.
That's right.
Ron and Nicole were murdered here at her Brentwood condo on the evening of June 12, 1994. During O.J. Simpson's trial, Crime scene investigators said they believed that the killer most likely entered through the rear gate and moved down the narrow walkway to the front of the condo where the savage murders were committed.
Okay, why don't we drive by the front? Yeah, let's do it. These places are super close to one another.
I don't understand. If there's people being brutally murdered, how half these houses wouldn't have heard it?
Absolutely.
Wow. Looks so different.
It is different.
On these front steps, the assailant knocked Nicole unconscious and slit her throat. Ron apparently came to her aid, but he could not defend himself as the killer stabbed him nearly 30 times. Investigators believe the savage slayings were not the work of a methodical professional. They were an act of uncontrollable rage.
I think we've seen everything we're going to see here.
I think so. I say we head over to Rockingham.
All right.
I just want to go to my house.
Okay.
That's where we were happy.
Okay.
Almost home.
O.J. Simpson's estate on North Rockingham Avenue, about 2 miles from Nicole's condo, is where the low-speed Bronco chase ended.
So this is Rockingham.
This is Rockingham. This is the street where he lived. This is where the Bronco chase ended. I gotta tell you, this is the first time I've been back here since it happened.
You were here the night of the chase?
Yes, I was. I was part of the SWAT negotiation team, responding here to the house, and there were 500 people down at the base of that street, chanting. They were pushing the car. It was crazy. There were news vans from all over the world, big satellite dishes. There were looky-loos, hordes of people. Now, keep in mind, it's a lot different than back then because since this all went down, they've demolished the house and rebuilt it.
Really?
Essentially, the property's the same, but what's on it is different. It's right up here. Okay, slow down, and you see this gate right here? This is the spot right here. Right here. As that Bronco pulls up, out of nowhere, this man comes running up and he's yelling, "OJ, don't do it! OJ, don't do it!"
Just toss the gun. Who is that out there? Just toss it, yes.
They grab him, they pull him off, and they take him away. But that was America's first look at Jason Simpson. It was crazy.
It's even crazy being here right now.
Yeah.
I know it's changed a lot, but just thinking about that this is where that all went down.
It is spooky. It was a crazy night.
Some of this presentation will be unpleasant. If you have difficulty or find yourself feeling very uncomfortable, please feel free to let me know. All right?
During the trial, prosecutors described in agonizing detail how a 6-inch knife ended the lives of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Both victims fought desperately for their lives, and both were overpowered. Since the murders, there has been an extensive hunt for the weapon that was used to commit these crimes. Many knives have been tested, but the murder weapon has never been found. To learn more about Jason Simpson's knife and if it is the murder weapon, Derek and Chris are meeting with former Chief L.A. County Coroner Investigator Craig Harvey.
The wounds don't seem to be
if you will, professionally administered. They seem to be at random, indiscriminate wounds on the body that are intended to incapacitate and not necessarily just dispatch simply. There was clearly a struggle. I think Ron Goldman struggled pretty valiantly against his assailant because he's got a lot more defense wounds than Nicole Brown has. Ron took quite a few injuries in his assault. In addition to the wounds in the neck area, he has stab wounds in the chest, he has stab wounds in the abdomen, the fatal wound being the one in the neck area.
What would you expect to see on the offender from what you saw on Ron Goldman's knuckles?
You might see bruising, you might see lacerations, you might see scuffing, that type of thing on a human body.
Would you say there's a pretty good chance that there'd be a fair amount of noticeable injuries if you took all the clothes off the suspect and took a look at his body?
I suspect that you would probably see some evidence of those kinds of injuries on their person.
If you're the suspect in this case, when you leave there, you're going to have some type of bruises, some type of cutting.
Yes, there was a lot going on in that scene.
What defensive wounds did you notice on Nicole Brown Simpson?
The defense wounds are primarily in her hands, on her fingers and stuff.
From the autopsy photos, we can see that on her dress, there's no blood.
The assumption is that whoever did it either grabbed her by the hair or by the forehead, tilted her back, hyperextending her neck, and then used the knife to cut.
To think what these people went through, being stabbed over and over and still being alive and having to see that knife plunge into you over and over again. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine it. But you have to, because it puts you in their position and it makes you work harder. I'm going to bring something out for you. Just get your opinion on it based on everything that we've said. Okay? Craig, what do you think about this knife in comparison to some of the wounds we've seen?
We can't exclude additional weapons having been used in these two murders. It's certainly a possibility. The tool marks that we are able to discern in some of the injuries gives us an indication that it was probably a single-edged weapon that was used. But so many of the injuries are lacking very specific characteristics. It would not be surprising to me that there was another knife involved.
Craig Harvey's analysis of the knife wounds led him to believe that many of the wounds could have been done by a single-bladed knife. Now, that's different than the knife we have that we think could be the murder weapon. On the other hand, he could not ultimately rule out a double-bladed knife. It could still very well be the murder weapon.
I think we have everything we came here to get. Craig, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Now, with respect to blood evidence, as you know, we've made enormous strides. We have advanced our ability to extract information from blood with the development of DNA testing. This allows us to be far more precise in pinpointing the possible source of a bloodstain.
The so-called trial of the century introduced DNA evidence to America, and O.J. Simpson's fate seemed to depend on what the jury thought about this testimony.
His blood on the rear gate, with that match that makes him 1 in 57 billion people that could have left that blood. Over and over again, we asked ourselves, can the defendant be excluded? The answer was no.
There is so little DNA. When you look at the smears of blood on the console, it's 7/10 of a drop. And of course, Mr. Goldman's contribution to that 7/10 of a drop of blood is at the most 30-40%. That's very, very, very little.
But even with the state's DNA evidence, the defense team was easily able to confuse the jury as well as the public, who had a difficult time with this new science. With the knife retrieved from Jason Simpson's abandoned storage locker, the investigators hope that recent advancements in DNA science will help uncover the truth about this possible murder weapon. So the team is meeting with Mark Taylor, a forensic scientist at one of the top private forensic labs in Southern California. The lab will examine the knife and its sheath for microscopic amounts of blood. If they find anything, They can use DNA testing to see if this blood belongs to Nicole Brown Simpson, Ronald Goldman, or persons unknown.
Set it down there. The presumptive test we used allows us a very sensitive color test that's very quick, and so we can determine quite quickly if something is blood. If we get a positive, then we have to do additional tests, of course, to determine if it's human blood. So,
how long would you be able to detect blood in that sheath in its current condition right now? How long would the blood actually last?
If it's been stored dry for tens of years, 10, 20, 30 years, not a problem. You'll be able to get detection from it. If bacteria grow on it, you'll end up with them feeding on the blood, and they can destroy the DNA in it and destroy the ability to detect the blood, too. It's negative. That one's negative, so we didn't detect anything on that, so... Again, negative.
The one thing that I made a point of never doing is open the sheath of the knife, because if they pulled blood off the sheath, it would be another piece to the puzzle falling into place.
It's time to cut this bad boy open.
As you might imagine, threads are a really good area to trap blood because it's very difficult to wash it out of the thread material, so... No. A little bit of something.
Yeah.
So there was a color change on that one. It's a positive reaction, something that just came up. We'll do additional testing to try to determine whether it is blood or not, and then we'll see if we can isolate DNA from the material in it.
And how long does it take to complete a process like that?
This is probably several weeks of work, so...
Getting a positive hit on Jason's knife was huge. For all we know, the blood could belong to Ron and Nicole. If we can link this knife to the murders, that's a real game changer. We could solve this case. I'm still having a hard time believing that the LAPD didn't reach out to Jason, or at least his lawyer. Maybe there's just no documentation for it.
All right? Go to the exhibit that I've got logged in there for you. I want you to hear something.
What is it that we're listening to?
You're going to be listening to the head of the Los Angeles Police Department Homicide Division. He left this voicemail at my office.
4:48 p.m. Well, Mr. Detective Castelli, I did hand deliver the letter. That was a request for Jason Simpson's any records of the statement regarding him. And I did hand deliver the letter, and then we did some research, and Jason Simpson was never interviewed. He refused to cooperate and was represented by counsel. So he was never, in fact, interviewed.
You're hearing it right from the person who's in charge of that division.
That's embarrassing. It really is. I worked there at the time, and I'm embarrassed.
I don't understand it.
It's basic protocol that you would talk to everybody in that immediate family constellation, if for no other reason than just to simply get, hey, what was going on?
We got to try to get one of the detectives that worked that case. I got to hear from them why they wouldn't have done it.
I think we need to reopen the whole thing. You know, how was the evidence collection done? Why were certain witnesses excluded? Jason Simpson has never been interviewed by law enforcement. I hate to be critical of my former agency, but there's a mistake that was made here as far as not interviewing him. There's something here, and this deserves a complete and thorough investigation.
Next time,
we found 2 trucks of them shooting.
Do you believe there were 2 assailants there?
Could be a second person.
That is false. This case generated 50 additional suspects, including Jason Simpson, but there's no evidence that anyone else was involved in these murders.
O.J. Simpson was never seen wearing a knit wool cap, but Jason wore it all the time.
The killings involved more than one suspect. I believe there was a cover-up to conceal the truth.